session, and I wanted to have a little debrief. So this client came in with issues around being in love and being open to receiving love. And over the course of the session, what actually came to light, gosh, so many things came to light. A challenge around integrating masculine and feminine energies, recognizing that you can have freedom and responsibility, which I'm going to speak into, as well as the energetics, and that there is a healthy expression of love. That love doesn't have to mean someone needing you. It can be a collaborative endeavor where there's passion and mutual desire, and not a need, but a want to share intimacy and share partnership. So where this client came in, long-term relationship ended, on good terms, but not in the healthiest of spaces, still in each other's lives because of parental obligations, but really wanting to create distance and not feeling able to do that. And as a result, not being able to open themselves up to intimate connection, not at the level that they were desiring because of all of the history of relationship of the past, long-term relationship. And so there was a lot of story involved and a desire to experience freedom again. And part of the story relating to that was that in order to be free, there is an element of irresponsibility, that freedom equals being irresponsible. And how can those two coexist? That was the challenge that we went through. So from a tantric point of view, freedom. It's an interesting topic to delve into and to investigate. Freedom, from a tantric point of view, is not wanting the moment to be any different than what it is. Complete surrender and acceptance to what the moment is. Now, that's not necessarily surrendering to what the future moments have to be. It's allowing change, because from a tantric point of view, there is the understanding that change is an inevitability. And so there is an opportunity to move into something more desiring. That being said, in order to do that, requires an acceptance of what is, a complete surrender to the truth of actuality. And that is freedom. Therein lies freedom. A complete blissful contentedness. And in that blissful contentedness, which is ananda in Sanskrit, it also encompasses moments of sadness as well as joy. Really, it speaks to the part of us that transcends the mind, that divine spark that resides within us, our essence nature, which is always in a state of ananda, is always in a state of contented bliss. However, because we over-identify with the mind, we become subject to the fact that the mind can experience great happiness, but also great sadness. And when we perceive our joy to be dependent on happiness, then in those moments where we're not, we struggle to connect with this sense of ananda, of bliss. And this is where spiritual liberation lies. In tantric teaching, there's a distinction between happiness and bliss. And these are the two goals, if you will, of the tantric path. One of worldly enjoyment and the other of spiritual liberation. This worldly enjoyment being bhoga, and this spiritual liberation being moksha. Spiritual liberation being experienced by our essence nature, the divine awareness that resides within us, the God spark, if you will, is a term I like to use, which is what experiences that contented bliss. The mind, on the other hand, which is so fixated on bhoga, this happiness and worldly enjoyment, can only comprehend this idea of ananda as happiness times infinity. Because this spiritual liberation isn't something that the mind can experience because it transcends it. It's something separate from it. Therein lies the challenge, in the over-identification with the mind. We become so fixated on happiness that that's what we perceive the goal of life being. Tantra says otherwise. Now, it's not saying that you can't have happiness, you can't live a successful worldly life. It's saying that the mind needs to become subservient to the essence nature, that the worldly enjoyment is second, and that the spiritual liberation needs to be the primary focus. Because if as the words of my teacher use, the carefully constructed house of cards of the life that we curate, that our ego is so attached to, falls, we have the spiritual liberation to fall back on, to be held by. And even if everything goes well in life, nothing can compare to the blissfulness of ananda that the essence nature of us experiences. And so what this client was challenged by was this fixation on freedom, this fixation of freedom needing to, or under the impression that freedom looks a certain way. And this is related to the mental impressions, the samskara, the unconscious programs and stories and beliefs that were in place and instilled at a younger age, at some other point. And now that story is no longer serving. Having the belief that freedom is equated with irresponsibility is inhibiting this individual from enjoying and embracing freedom, because there's this desire to not be irresponsible. This isn't what they're looking for. At a younger time in life, at another point in life, this was their definition. But now, as a more mature adult, stepping into integrated adulthood, it's not a helpful definition. And the challenge therein is integrating the two. It's integrating, this is partly what came up, the masculine with the feminine. And this speaks into the polarities that in tantric teaching we live in and we exist in a non-dual universe. That all there is, was, and ever will be is one divine consciousness. However, it's expressed in an infinite number of ways. Everything that is a permutation of consciousness is what exists in the world. You, me, the mountains, the sky, is all different vibrations of the one consciousness. And so life appears dualistically. We live in a world full of paradoxical duality, of polar opposites. We live in a world of light and dark and up and down and male and female and masculine and feminine. And whilst we perceive these things to be different, from a tantric point of view, they're merely separate expressions of the same thing. They're consciousness vibrating at opposite ends of the spectrum. And because we are, in essence, expressions of divine consciousness, it means that that potential, for the spectrum of vibration, of the range between the polarities exists. So we have the capacity to exhibit and embody masculine energy and feminine energy. And being able to allow the two to dance harmoniously in the beautiful symphony of life is really the meeting point of the two. It's the expression of love. It's the glue that binds it all together. And learning to play with the polarities and hold both in a healthy, mature way is what's being asked of us as human beings. It can be easy for us to over-identify with a particular pole and get fixated and lost in that, and lose sight of the fact that we have the potential to embody the range. And this typically happens, at least from my point of view, because of the conflation between the energetics of masculinity and femininity and male and female. Now, male and female being the poles of gender, whereas masculine and femininity being the poles of energetics. Just because you are a man doesn't mean that you can't exhibit feminine energetics, and vice versa. As a woman, you have the capacity to exhibit masculine energetics. The challenge is bringing awareness to this, to then choose where to reside, where to inhabit and embody particular energetics, particular polarities. So it becomes a choice and we don't become a slave to them. And over the course of this session, we got to go on a journey where she got to explore a lot of these concepts of femininity and what that means, and freedom and what that means, and love and what that means to her. And whilst I didn't explain all of these concepts from a tantric point of view, because in that space that's not my role, I'm there as a guide in mind yoga sessions to allow that person to navigate the own landscape of their consciousness. I'm there to just go with them and illuminate particular areas that perhaps would benefit from some attention. But in this space, I get to speak into the tantric teachings, I get to speak into the wisdom, and I get to bridge the gap and see where these things, these areas, get to have their grounding in timeless wisdom and timeless teachings. So for this video, the idea of masculine and feminine polarities being something intrinsic and inherent within us, something we get to play with, and an ongoing dance during our lifetime. This idea of freedom being something that can be found, the goal of the spiritual path, the primary goal being liberation, freedom, complete contentedness in the moment is possible in the tantric path and attainable in any moment simply by returning to presence, which is available to us even though it can be challenging and is a choice. And this idea of love, that love doesn't have to be doesn't have to be dependent. That love can get to be something other than what the programming that we have installed on the hard drive of our mind encourages us to believe without considering it. And this is the beauty of mind yoga sessions. We get to delve into these stuck thoughts that are no longer serving, to create the space so that the essence nature, consciousness can dissolve away from the binding of the mind and find liberation, find freedom, find joy, and find happiness ultimately.